Welcome back to the Superstuff Roundup. Today we're cutting through the memes, the misinformation, and the lies that have surrounded this episode for over a year now. This is episode 5. Covering episode 5 is a complex task to undertake, so let's break it down into sections and start with the why. I have an entire video on this, so do check that out if you want the full details, but to summarize, Resurrection F was a huge success, Dragon Ball Kai was coming to an end, and the rights holders wanted to keep the momentum going. So they came up with Super. Normal shows can have 6 to 8 months of pre-production, whereas Super only had around 2 at the very least. Pre-production is important because you need to have a good buffer of episodes completed before the series begins, so as to set a good schedule for the remainder of the series. You never ever want to catch up with yourself, you always want your staff rotations to be at least 6 to 8 weeks ahead of their episode due date. By the time Super began, the estimate based on some of the info we had is that they only had 4 episodes complete, or at the very least, nearing completion. That means that episode 5, an episode that's almost entirely action, very likely only had around 4 weeks to be completed in. For comparison, the major action episodes in the Future Trunks arc had between 8 and 11. Quite simply, episode 5 ran out of time. It was the big demonstration of the schedule crumbling in on itself, and those effects will forever be felt throughout Super. Probably. So let's talk about the who. Who's responsible for certain scenes in the episode? Well, before we get into that, I want to clear up some misinformation. In an interview with Anime News Network, Norihiro Hayashida, one of the producers at Toei, who I should note doesn't work on Super, blamed Super's bad animation on newbie animators. And while he does go on to talk about the industry and how there's a lack of time, he specifically hammers home that newbie animators are responsible for Super's bad animation. That is patently false. For one, a large portion of Super's staff worked on the original series, and the others have at least a decade or 2 of experience. Of course, there are exceptions, but they're not significant enough to make a real difference. If we look at episode 5 in particular, the newest animators still have at least 3 or 4 years of experience, and are right at the bottom of the staff list, meaning they contributed very little. The animation supervisor is Naoki Tate, who was a known name back on Dragon Ball Z and will go on to contribute some fantastic episodes in Super. He has well over 20 years of experience. Ken Otsuka, the top credited key animator here, is a huge name, working on Gurren Lagann, My Hero Academia, Naruto, Kill la Kill. He's also got 20 years of experience too. If you keep going down the list, the vast majority of people on this episode have at least 10 years of experience. Episode 5 is a bad looking episode and there are many more to come. I'm not going to defend that, but I'm also not going to have a producer at Toei throw competent animators under the bus instead of admitting that Super was brought into production too late. It blows my mind that he has the nerve to say that, considering anyone can look at the history of these animators and see that that's false. Right, with that said, let's talk about who did what. So the opening scenes that are really just no good, the ones that really look like an animator's roughs being thrown out there unfinished, are actually unknown. There are no identifiable traits here because it's just too rough. Naoki Tate is the animation supervisor, and even though he's not credited for key animation, you can see he's still done his best to improve or finish up the animation here, especially in the second half where it appears he straight up contributed his own animation, likely in an attempt to get the episode done on time. His work here is unsurprisingly rough. He had just finished work on episode 2 and wasn't expected to clean up and supervise this episode in only a few weeks. It's not great, but I do think the cool, exaggerated Kamehameha is actually very good. It's a pretty nice demonstration of his style. Next up is Ken Otsuka, who is primarily responsible for all of the very on-model shots in the episode. Despite the iffy fight scenes, most of the close-ups are very good, and they're of course thanks to him. In the second half, he also animates his own fight scene, which ends in a cool Kamehameha too. Otsuka's style is pretty easy to spot. He's all about angles, which likely comes from his extensive work on mech anime. You can see little bits of the chief animation supervisor, Takeo Ide, scattered throughout, but it doesn't seem like he had much time to contribute either. The Blu-ray release featured some significant corrections, and many of them were in fact done by Ide. He mainly just added in some extra detail to some of the stills. Naoki Tate also came back and redrew some sequences, mainly improving some of the movement, but also like Ide, he redrew some of the art too. The Blu-ray changes are definitely more patchwork than genuine fixes, but it helped elevate an episode that was truly awful into something still not great, but not abysmal. I'd probably be okay calling the second half of this episode reasonably acceptable now. Those of you who first saw this episode dubbed are definitely lucky. But really, that's about all I have to say on episode 5. It blew up astronomically back when it first aired. It was a real blow to the excitement of a new Dragon Ball series. But frankly, it's not the worst looking episode in Super by a large margin. It was blown out of proportion by fans who frankly didn't know very much about animation, so while it is no good, I do think it's important to be realistic and to actually know where to place the blame when talking about the episode. Hopefully this video will encourage that. If you have any questions or feel I've missed something, by all means leave a comment down below. I do try to respond to everything that gets asked, so don't fret about being ignored. Drop me a like if you enjoyed this, subscribe if you're interested in more on Super's animation, but for now, I will see you next time.